All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will welcome you to tonight's Development Review Commission. We'll get started here. January 28th, 2020. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Okay, that's a mouthful. So, who do we have here with us tonight? Ladies and gentlemen, on my right we have Commissioner Tom Brown, Commissioner Don Cassano, Vice Chair Michael DiDomenico. I am Chairman David Lyon. To my left is Commissioner Michelle Schwartz, Commissioner Phil Amorosi, and Commissioner Andrew Johnson. We also have with us from City staff Suparna Dasgupta, Joanna Berry, Steve Abrahamson, Diana Kaminsky, Obina Kingsby, Robbie Aaron, Ryan Levesque is here with us, and we also have Mbika Adekari. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first item of business is a motion of approval for our meeting minutes from a previous meeting, December 10th, 2019. We've reviewed those meeting minutes and found no corrections. May I hear a motion regarding the approval of said minutes?
So Mr. Moved. Chairman. Oh, go ahead.
So seconded.
Okay. Motion to approve from Commissioner Cassano and seconded from Vice Chair DiDomenico. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed, if any, and in abstention. Okay, the motion passes 5-0 with Chairman Lyon and Commissioner Schwartz abstaining. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two regular cases which we have elected to put on our consent agenda. This means we intend to approve them without further discussion unless someone here wishes to hear them. I know our applicants are eager to argue their cases, but you may get off a little quicker on consent. So those two cases are the loading lofts and the Fifth Apartments. Is there anyone here that wishes to have either of those cases heard? Seeing none, we'll keep our consent agenda as written. May I hear a motion regarding the approval of that consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Phil Amorosi. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Motion passes 7-0. All right. Thank you. So we will move on to our concluding piece of business, Mbika.
Members of the Commission, before we get started with the presentation for the Development Bonus Program, I do want to first kind of give you just a prelude update to where we are at since our last public hearings. We went to City Council on October 17th. At that hearing, we had consulted with the Council in recommending a continuance on the item. The items were pertaining to the Urban Core Master Plan, the Major General Plan Amendment, and the new Urban Code Zoning District. All those items were continued to February 13th. The reason for that continuance was the ability to give us caught up to develop this development bonus program that we've been talking about. So the several months that we have led up to this period, November, December, and January, we've been developing the program. We've gotten public input on the project. We've had revisions of the plans, getting specific input on it. We're here today at the scheduled public hearing. We had also planned to go to the council in February 13th on this item. We are planning, from the City Council perspective, planning to slow the process down. We were originally planning to have a scheduled work study session with City Council in late January. We're now postponing that to a February and March meeting date so that we can kind of take the time to roll out the information about the program to City Council. They really didn't have an opportunity to engage with us on the development bonus program. So what that will mean is we'll still have a hearing tonight. We hope to get a recommendation for you all, but certainly know that our scheduled hearing date for potential adoption of this item will be more likely in April or May as we roll out the process to City Council. So with that said, we'll get it up, provide a presentation by Ambika. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Chairman Lyon and the commission members, we came to you in December to talk about the development bonus program, and we showed you some slides and made a presentation on the basis of it. Since then, we have organized several meetings with the stakeholders, and also the staff and the consultants have worked on it quite a bit, and there have been some changes, kind of bringing it down to a much more streamlined flavor. So I will run those slides by you and give you an update information on the development bonus program. Ryan basically mentioned that we've been working on the Urban Core Master Plan in the Urban Core District for quite some time, actually more than 2 years. And the development bonus program is actually integrated to both of them. And just as a reminder, the Urban Core District is an opt-in district, and the Urban Core Master Plan is an advisory policy level document. The bonus program was on the meeting, like Ryan mentioned, the council meeting on October 17th, when we had just the initial thoughts about what would be the elements of the bonus program. We were asked by the council and also people who spoke at that meeting that it would be good to really learn of the details of the bonus program and how people actually got the heights, both on the Urban Core District and also on the Urban Core Master Plan. So the bonus program from that perspective is a little more detail on how those heights are achieved in both of those programs, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on that one. But basically, the bonus program will provide a level of certainty to the developers, because on the Urban Core District, it will be basically administrative. So people who look at the bonus program can see these are the kind of heights and density we can get by this kind of public benefits. Basically, once again, to remind you, there are 4 elements of the bonus program: affordable housing, it could be on-site or it could be off-site by paying an in-lieu fee; public gathering space, basically on the ground level; sustainability elements, or historic preservation. And the structure is, on the Urban Core District, it's mostly administrative, so the heights and densities are kind of preset. The applicants still go through the development review program, and in the downtown applications, the council also wants to take a look at it. We don't know the details and the extent of how they want to take a look at it. We'll find out when we go to the council. The historic preservation bonus program is going to be slightly different than the other programs because it's sort of independent. It is through a transfer of development right. I'll go into a little bit of detail on that one. And the bonus program also provides a reference point and measuring yardstick when people apply for the Urban Core Master Plan heights and go through a rezoning process. As you know, the Urban Core District, once people opt in, becomes regulatory, so it's kind of pretty simplified. But Urban Core Master Plan heights are only recommended, they are only advisory. But how do people apply for those Urban Core Master Plan heights? This basically tells you what kind of public benefit that you have to provide to get those heights. So unlike the way that it is happening right now, people apply for planned area development, and then there is some negotiation that goes on. There will be some yardstick and some mechanism to say, okay, these are the kind of public benefits we are looking for in the Urban Core District, and if you're looking for more heights and density, we want to negotiate from that background. So we have some measuring parameters. The bonus program basically is based on when you provide a public benefit, you get additional heights and density. That's a very simplified diagram. But it is conceptually based on the additional project value that an applicant gets. So the UCD base program would be, once you opt in, you get the base heights. So for example, in UC1, you get 120 feet height just by opting in the Urban Core 1, District 1, which is in downtown. But If you want to go to up to 160 feet, that is how you earn, that bonus is how you earn by obtaining 100 points in total. And though we hired a consultant to do that, and the mechanism that the assumption that they have done is for the base program, there will be some profit that the developer will make. And for that 160 feet height, another scenario, there will be additional profit that the developer is likely to make. Whatever is the difference, that is basically split into half. The developer is also motivated to participate because they will get additional profit, but the city and the community also gets a benefit. That is the whole rationale about it. Just to remind you, this is the urban core district map. There are 7 different zones within the urban core district. All of them are floating until people actually opt in. The urban core 1 is in downtown, so is urban core 2, which is more or less the heritage district. 3 is on the intersections, and the, let me see if I can. Okay. So this is Mill Avenue. That's University Drive, just for a reference. That's McClintock, that's Apache. And that's 1, UC1, that's UC2, UC3, UC4, 5, and 6 is in only one place. We went through it before, but I just wanted to remind you because it's been, it's been some time. So that's the map. Yes. Oh, okay, okay. It's the same, but I wanted them to see it. They can't see there, so yeah. Sure, I will do that. So I was basically showing those 7 different zones, and I was locating them for the benefit of everyone. You've seen this map before, but I was just reminding the coordinates. So the base and bonus scenario in the urban core district is in UC1 through UC6, there is a base heights that we have gone through. That's the urban core district. If it gets adopted, those are the heights, the base heights that you get just by adopting and opting in. So once you opt in, the base heights are available to you. And those are the bonus heights that are available to you if you participate in the bonus program and meet all the criteria of the bonus program. So as an example, on UC1, the base height is 125, the bonus height is 160. UC4, the base height is 70, the bonus height is 90. And then UC5 and 6 have a very limited amount of bonus, and that is because UC5 and 6 are very close to single-family residential areas. So just to maintain the sensitivity of the height and to make them more compatible with the surrounding, the bonus provided is very little. We still wanted to keep it because for some people it might be beneficial, it might be attractive for them to maybe allow an extra story or increase the height of the ground floor. And in order to obtain the UC5 and 6 bonus, the developers have to make only 10 points, whereas in the rest of them, they have to earn a full 100 points. And I'll go into the details on how one earns the 100 points. So that is the footnote out there. A total of 100 points is required to obtain all these bonus scenario, heights and density, except on UC5 and 6, only 10 bonus points are adequate. Okay, so the first item out of those 4 items we talked about, the first one is affordable housing. As you can see, compared to what we came here last time on the study session, we have simplified, streamlined, and made it a little bit easier for the developers to opt in to the bonus program because we had several meetings with the public and also the stakeholders, and we have incorporated many of the inputs and the comments that we have received. So the affordable workforce housing, if you provide it on site, if you provide any of them, 3% of the total units to the residents who make up to 50% of the area median income, which is in 2019 for a family of 4 was about $73,000, you get full 100 points. Or for the area median income families 51 to 80, you provide 5% of the total units as affordable, you get 100 points. Any one of them, you don't have to combine them, any one of them gives you a full 100 points. So in other words, the city is giving a priority for affordable housing on the site. If the developers provides 3% of their total number of units is affordable to 50% AMI or lower, full 100 point is granted, and they can go to that full bonus point heights is shown here. The other way to participate on the affordable housing is through an in lieu fee. So you might have a project which is commercial, or which is hotel, or which is office, or you might have a residential project, but the developers would prefer to actually pay an in lieu fee rather than actually providing the housing units on site. They also have a mechanism, and the points have been calculated as $6,500 per point. And they can buy those points by writing a check to Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is managed by the city. And the money from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is utilized to support the affordable housing, either purchase it and rent it or subsidize the rent to the people who are eligible. So it serves the same purpose, but this is another mechanism that the developers can participate. But if you participate from this side, if you really want to pay only the in lieu fee, you cannot get that total 100 point. You can get the maximum of only 70 points. You have to get the other points through either providing the public gathering spaces or by providing sustainability elements that you will see in the other slides. And these amounts are slightly different. On UC1 and UC2, it's the same amount per point. UC3 and UC4, the points are more because those sites are bigger. So what the consultants have done is the sites on UC1 and UC2, when they calculated the pro forma to figure out the real estate economics and how much it costs and how much they can provide back into the public benefit, those sites were taken as 0.7 acres. That seems to be the typical type of sites that the builders make. And we did look at the existing projects, and 0.7 acres is the site that is taken for UC1 and UC2. Whereas in UC3 and 4, along Apache and outskirts, the typical sites are 3 acres. So because you're getting the same kind of height on a larger area, the money that you have to pay to gain the same point is more because you're getting more volume to build. That is the basic idea out here. And then if the sites are bigger than 0.7 on UC1 and UC2, or more than 3 acres on UC3 and UC4, then there is a prorated scaling that could be negotiated between the community development director and the applicant. So there's a flexibility in case those sites are not exactly the way which are used by the consultants to use a typical site and pro forma. There is also a mechanism and flexibility to work with the developer. The third element that you can gain and earn the bonus point is by providing public outdoor gathering space on site. It has to be on the ground level, it has to be on site. And you gain this by providing anywhere between 5 to 20% of the net site area is the public outdoor gathering space. And that has to meet all of the UCD standards. So on the UCD, we have public outdoor gathering spaces. Those are listed with diagrams and dimensions. And it also has specifications on what you have to provide. They have to provide typically any 5 of those 10 or 11 different elements so that it's more usable. It has chairs, it has landscaping, it has bike parking, it has kiosks, something that people can use. It's a benefit to the public, and it has to be publicly accessible. They have to write easement dedication to the city so that it's publicly accessible, but the property managers or the developers have to maintain it. So if they provide the public outdoor gathering spaces to those specifications, there are different points that you can make. Here are the points that you can earn. If you provide on UC1 and UC2, there are many different tiers that you can provide the gathering space. Anywhere from 5% of the total to 20% of the total, you get different points, 15 all the way to 60. Please do remember that in the urban core district, 2.5% of the net site area is required for any site to be provided as a public outdoor gathering space. Initially, we had a different condition. We wanted them to provide one type of public gathering space on a site that is more than 1 acre. But once we started working on the bonus program, to make it equitable and to make it fair, we had slightly changed the urban core district regulations to say that you do require to provide 2.5% of whatever site that you have net area as a public outdoor gathering space once you opt into the urban core district. Remember that you get more heights and density once you opt in, so there's some public benefit that the city wants them to provide. Now, these are above and beyond, except one condition. These are all above and beyond that 2.5%, except that if there is a project which occupies 90% of the site area, net site area, which happens in examples like the collective project, which is, I think, 97.5% site coverage, then that 2.5% is kind of included. You don't have to, it is cumulative. If you provide a total 5%, you still get the 15 points. So the distinction is if the site coverage is 90% or more, then all these percentages of the public gathering spaces are just cumulative. You just provide whatever percentage are required. But if your site coverage is less than 90%, then these will be in addition to the 2.5% that is required for the UCDS. You know, a little bit of a complication out there, but that is the explanation. And even with the outdoor gathering spaces, the maximum points you can earn is 60. So just by providing public outdoor gathering spaces, you cannot earn the full bonus points, except in, as I mentioned, on UC 5 and 6, you do earn bonus point for that 5 feet by providing 10 point. Otherwise, you have to provide a total of 100 point by different permutation and combination, and you get the full bonus. Then the third element is the sustainability expenditure. This is simplified again. This is based on the amount that you spend on the sustainability elements. For every $250,000 that you spend on the sustainability elements, and I'll have the next slides showing you a list of what elements you can provide on site, you get different levels of points. On UC 1 and 2, you get 30 points up to a maximum of 90 points. In other words, if you spend $750,000, you get 90 points. That's 3 times. And then UC 3 and 4, you get less point for the same expenditure, and the logic is the same as I described before, because those sites are bigger, you're getting the same amount of height, so you get more volume to build. That's why you got to spend a little more money to be equitable. And the sustainability elements, money could be spent on any one of the 10 or 12 elements that have been listed. One is grouped on the resilience against extreme heat, and we have coordinated it with the climate action plan that was approved by the city, and then also the sustainability program where the extreme heat and the resiliency to climate are some of the priorities out there. So they have been coordinated. Any one of those, some examples, for example, is biodiversity, different types of plants, covering to minimize the heat island impact, and then providing materials that reflect the sun, or providing architectural treatment on the windows, having a permeable site. Any one of them, the developers can choose, but as long as they spend that total $250,000, they get that many points. So it's kind of simplified. They can pick and choose whatever is convenient for them on that particular site. And there's also, just to give additional flexibility, there's also another way to meet it in case the developers wants to choose another International Green Construction Code 2018, because these elements that you saw are basically because of they are included in the International Green Construction Code. That's a code that some cities in the valley have adopted, and that's a code that City of Tempe is also contemplating. It is studying to adopt it as a voluntary mechanism so that all the building construction and site development is more sustainable. And if the developer wants to choose any other elements from the International Green Construction Code 2018 or any update that the city might adopt, those elements will also qualify for that $250,000 expenditure for every 30 points or 15 points, as I showed before. So there's a flexibility from that round also. Now, the fourth one is historic preservation, which is kind of on its own. As you know, that the historic preservation is also a priority of the city, but we don't have many mechanisms right now. We don't have tools to really ask the developers to preserve it. A lot of it is in good faith, and sometimes the developers, if it works for them, they can go to the Historic Preservation Commission in the city and eventually may be able to demolish it after giving some notices. So this bonus program, we want to make it work, and we've worked these elements with the stakeholders, with the members of the Historic Preservation Commission, and also the members of Tempe Historic Preservation Foundation, to provide some economic incentives for people to preserve the historic buildings and still not lose the potential. And this is through a transfer of development rights mechanism. This is allowed by the state law, and some other jurisdictions have utilized it to conserve the open space. And it's a little kind of complicated math, and it has to be done in a case-by-case basis. But as you know, there are not too many historic properties. So anytime a historic property decides that they want to preserve it, we want to give them incentive to transfer the potential of the development that they can achieve through a bonus to another location or to an adjoining location. So, for example, the property that is historic is called a sending property. And then the sending property, there's a particular calculation which I'll show you, can utilize that economic advantages that they may have if they provide a conservation easement in perpetuity to the city, and if they do a contract to conserve and preserve air space and land space and actually maintain that historic preservation, then they can utilize that potential development right somewhere else. So this becomes a very attractive instrument for the city and for anyone to really preserve the historic building and still not lose out the potential economic benefit of it. I'll show you some examples here. So the way it works is, suppose there is a historic property like this one, and if you opt in, that is your full bonus height, let's say 160 feet on UC1. But you can't build it here because you have to now give a conservation easement to the city that you will maintain that building, you'll preserve the building, your potential rights are completely severed, and it will be rezoned that no one on that land can build anything, but you have to preserve the buildings. If you do that, you get full 100 points for that bonus, and that potential that you could have built is something that you can sell or transfer. So that is the potential remaining development right that you can transfer to another location within the UCD, and you can go up to the maximum height that is allowed in the Urban Core Master Plan guidance. And there is a way, this is calculated, the transfer of development right is calculated in volume because sites come in different sizes, and there is a volume, there's an example on how you actually calculate. And so before I go on to that example, the historic property becomes the sending property. The site that utilizes the transfer of development right becomes the receiving property, and the receiving property can go up to the Urban Core Master Plan heights. This will go through a very kind of pretty airtight development agreement and conservation easement and rezoning, and there are not too many properties. Any property that wants to preserve and conserve that historic property will work with the city, and then there is a mechanism that the rights, the potential right will be severed from one location, it will be rezoned accordingly, and then wherever they want to put it, or they want to sell it, or if they own another lot of land within the UCD, that also gets rezoned as a receiving property with those additional rights. All of those will be done in a really good paperwork, and all those restrictions will be put in place, and the conservation easement for that property will be provided to the city in perpetuity. So this becomes a very important and interesting tool that was not available right now for historic properties to be able to be utilized. So for example, if you have a property, a historic building, and if the property owner agrees to preserve that building, and let's say that building has a 30-foot height, and the building has a floor plate of 4,500 square feet, and so multiply that, that's the volume that you can transfer. And that transferable volume then can go to different types of sites, and then you get different floor space or different height. Basically, that volume can be distributed the way that you want. In theory, you can also distribute it in more than one location. And the state law also requires that we also have a provision that the city might also have an opportunity to actually buy or hold it, and then resell it. And when we checked it, some of the other jurisdictions and how they use it, basically they have a list of sending properties. There is a registry. There's also a registry where interested people can make themselves available and interested in buying some of those rights, because then you don't have to rezone. You get all those heights administratively. And then the city can keep the list, and then there is no right-of-way time limit. As long as you give that conservation easement, you have time that you can pass on that development right to another location. And like I said before, just to repeat, the rights will be severed from that property, so that even if it changes hand or whatever, they cannot build anything on that property. It will be rezoned accordingly. There will be that permanent conservation easement. Another location where the rights have to go, that will also be rezoned with an overlay saying that it has received that additional heights and density that they can build. So that's how the transfer of development right will work. And the urban core master plan. So the bonus program is simple, straightforward, mostly administrative on the urban core district. All those calculations that I showed you, developers can take a look at it and say, okay, if I do this, I get 100 points and I can get this kind of heights and density. The urban core master plan is, as you know, is an advisory document. It's not regulatory. It's a policy document. But there are heights that we have proposed, and if the developers want that kind of height, it is not going to be available just by asking. We are going to be using to negotiate these public benefits that we just counted, and we can say, okay, you want 200 feet of height for this property. These are the kind of things that we want. Affordable housing, public gathering spaces, either historic preservation combination or sustainability elements. And we don't want to perfectly specify the numbers out here, because we can't do that. The urban core master plan is advisory and recommended, but we can use that kind of a yardstick so that the developers and property owners are prepared that they have to provide some public benefit back to the city and the public when they apply for the heights. So that will be the measuring yardstick. And as you know, the urban core master plan heights are higher than the urban core district height. So this urban core master plan height, if it gets approved, will be an annex, an appendix to the code. And then in the ordinance, we have made a reference that when you want to apply for urban core master plan height, the heights are shown in the map that is annexed, and there will be negotiation based on the number on how you gain the bonus points. So it is going to be not one-on-one, it's going to be different, because this is something that we need to kind of discuss one-on-one, because every urban core master plan application is unique application that goes through all the public hearing and eventually go to the council. It's not certain that it will be approved, but if it gets approved, there is a room for negotiation on what kind of public benefits and amenities that you have to provide. Okay, so in summary, in the urban core district, the bonus program will provide a certainty. The developers can say, okay, if I opt in, I get this 120 feet height, but if I provide, if I can earn 100 points bonus program, I can go up to 160 feet. So it's kind of, they know. They don't have to go to the council to get a rezoning approval, and all that hearing process becomes more or less administrative. So it is pretty predictable and certain, probably would help them. And then hopefully Every time people want more height right now, they come through a planned area development and application. Now, within the UCD, they may not be need to do that PAD. And in the Urban Core Master Plan, if you apply for the PAD or the development agreement process, we have a yardstick on how to get the height. You got to give something back to the community. And the public benefit in exchange for the additional density and height is the core of the idea of the bonus program. So we have been, just to give you a recap, even since October 17th hearing, we've been having many meetings on the bonus program. We have been meeting with the stakeholders when they want to meet with us. We also held public meetings. We held public meetings even last week. We had an open house, and these are some of the list of the meetings that we've been having. We are talking to anyone who wants to talk to us. We are responding to any emails. Actually, there was an email that was received today, which I think you got a copy. Mr. Sam Sprague, he in principle is supportive, in general is supportive of the bonus program, but a few other things still need to be worked out. So whatever we've been getting, we've also been kind of keeping it. And we'll be going to HPC on the 12th. We send them all this information by memo, but we will go to them on February 12th. And then today is the DRC hearing, and we go to the council on the 13th. And like Ryan mentioned, because of the complexity and certain other things, we do want to let the council and everyone take their time in making a decision. So by April or May, we would have an opportunity to go to the work study session at least twice so that we can describe all of this, because there are 3 or 4 different elements. There's Urban Core District, there's Urban Core Master Plan, there's a General Plan Amendment, and then there's a bonus program, and all of them are kind of connected. And especially in the bonus program, there's also a bit of a complication in explaining and understanding. So we want to give it the time, because these things are very important to the city. So that is our plan, and we're very happy to respond to any queries or questions you may have.
Okay. Nicely said, Ambika. Questions for Mr. Adhikar? I have one. Commissioner Brown.
The first 15 pages in our agenda
Yes.
for this project are the memo pages from BAE, Urban Economics.
Right.
And it says that this is a summary. Are we to believe that all these details are in the ordinance? When I look back and forth, I don't see.
Absolutely. The ordinance is complete. Ordinance is more efficient. There's only one table. There are basically maybe 2 tables. And then there's a lot of language on how the TDR works and how you get all the bonus points. The memo is, because there's so much complication on it, the memo goes into a little bit of explanation on each one of them and how you earn the points. So the memo is not the legal document. The memo is for information. The legal document, eventually, when we want to get it approved, is the ordinance, which will become part of the Urban Core District.
So I have one or two questions that I found
Yes.
information in the memo, and I'm not sure if it's in the ordinance, but I suspect that you're ready to answer a question of that
Yes.
of the sort.
Yes.
So on page 6 of this memo, there's a keynote 2, which I won't read entirely, but the second half of it says, to the extent that the current point schedule promotes the assembly of development parcels, the DBP allows the city to scale in lieu fees upward or downward as approved by the Community Development Director or designatee.
Yeah, I alluded to that earlier on, because the pro forma, the calculation for that bonus points is, again going back, is based on capturing half of the additional profit, right?
Yes.
So, and those are based on 0.7 acres on UC1 and UC2, and 3 acres of the sites on UC3, 4, and beyond. And in case somebody comes with a 5-acre site on UC3 and 4, or maybe 2.5 acre site on UC3 or a different site, and those numbers do not work for them, this is something that could be negotiated. It may not be exactly prorated, but we know how to, the pro formas we have for reference, and we can do that. So give you an example. So if there is a site that is 3 acre, there's a point system that gives you 100 points right now. If the site is 5 acres, then obviously you cannot get the same 100 point by providing only what is asked here, because you have more land to build. So for the same heights and density, you can go beyond. And they will have to spend a little more money, for example, on getting the same sustainability bonus points, which $250,000 was buying you 15 points. Now maybe it will be $325,000 or something to buy the same point. And for the affordable housing points, for example, it was $15,000 per point, and you see 3 and 4, maybe it becomes 17 or 18,000, something like that.
Okay.
So that people cannot assemble a lot of lands and then provide just what we are asking to provide and build at higher heights and density in the entire bigger site.
I applaud that
Yeah.
understanding of the what ifs and dealing with that. I just wonder if it should be documented or sort of stipulated, maybe in the ordinance.
It's in the
spelled out.
ordinance also. There's a
Okay.
language in the ordinance
Okay,
also.
that was one concern. On page 9, I think it's just a language question. They're talking about on B3, next page. Allocate space and this is under greenhouse gas emissions. Point B is allocate space and pathways for future installation of on-site renewable energy systems, including solar panels and battery deployment. I'm pretty darn sure they mean raceways, what we call raceways, conduits. But pathways, I mean, the average person reading this might think, is this part of the open space? I think the word raceways is the industry standard.
Yeah, the pathway
Okay.
language comes from the,
Okay, let's move on.
the climate change. It's more like a poetic language, but
Yes,
raceways is
conduits under
right.
pavement, under
Yeah.
parking lots are case. On B5, same page, it mentions that energy assumption, one of the ways of getting the energy or the sustainability points are to achieve energy conservation levels that are at least 50% of the baseline energy consumption of the project and get it certified by a third party. Is this to be certified before construction or a year later like the LEED program used to do?
Okay, so this is an implementation question. We will actually be preparing an implementation manual on all of these because these things have to be very simple. But to your question, because the bonus program is kind of precursor, you get the heights and density beforehand, and the construction and all those things happen later on.
Of course.
So there's going to be a good faith type of calculation and agreement. And later on, when we do the inspection and so on, we want to make sure that all of those things are built accordingly.
So, I mean, the horse will be out of the barn, and let's accept that the calculations are really good. It would also be great to sort of get the historic data, which is something we have to do on the LEED programs. And you mentioned a similar certification in the when you were talking this evening, that was also in the IGCC on the one slide you referred to.
Right. If they want to utilize any other elements of the IGCC 2018 or update, they do have to get a third-party certification because we don't have the capacity right now. Eventually, if we adopt it, maybe we'll have staff. But in the beginning, we looked at some other jurisdiction also. They can hire a consultant very simply and certify that it is accordingly, and then we can review that.
Okay, one last question. On page 13, there's an example of the UC3 multifamily calculation for a 3-acre site.
Mm-hmm.
And the profit's really spectacular. What is that like per year, if these are sold? I mean, is there a timeline involved in this calculation?
That's one time. So the bonus program is one time. And the consultants have to use a lot of assumption to organize that profit. But they did double check with the developers in terms of the cost and construction typology and so on. And you have to come up, I think we are the first city in Arizona which have a bonus program being developed which ties to some numerical real estate economics. And as you know, these things are under assumption. When you do a pro forma, you assume a certain things and assign a point value so that they may not be exactly perfect in every case. And that's the example that they're giving. And this is only an explanation. That's not part of the ordinance.
Of course.
It's just an explanation to make understanding easier.
Thank you for your crisp answers.
Absolutely.
All right, other questions for Ms. Yalakar. Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Commissioner Lyon, or Chairman Lyon. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the staff for working on this and for the past 2 years, because it's really hard work and it's really confusing, and I'm still confused. So, but that's me. I like that you raised the public space features from a minimum of 3 to 5. That's great. That's what I had asked for. But I just want to be clear on UC 5 and 6, right? The bonus program gets them from 55 to 60 feet with just 1/10 of the points that they have to spend in other UCD areas. But then, according to the UCMP plan, from that 60, they could actually go up to 90 by applying for a PAD. Is that how they get that?
Okay, so there are two things, Commissioner Amorosi. First of all, thank you for working with us on making that 55 feet. I remember that we actually worked with you. Initially, we had a 60 feet, and we brought it down to 55 feet. There was an internal discussion among the staff whether to not have bonus program on UC 5 and UC 6 because they are like, have to be low-rise, compatible, and stepping it down to the single-family homes. But we kind of discussed, and Ryan, with a lot of experience in working with people, we thought there's a value for some people to gain that 5 feet. That might trigger a next story or some additional benefit, and just a 5 feet additional height, if they provide a public benefit, might be worth it. That's why we kept it. And the 10 points are approximated because if you see for 100 points, in many places you get 35 feet or 40 feet. So 5 feet is not a whole lot, and you can get it by just doing 10 points, because if you look at some of the accounts, all those 3 different elements are kind of normalized, whether you buy in lieu fee or whether you provide a sustainability elements on site or whether you provide the public outdoor gathering spaces, the costs are similar. So no one can really game the system. They are very similar. And the urban core master plan height is a different game. So the urban core master plan height is not given. Urban core master plan height is just like when people apply right now, either through PAD or the development agreement. And if they want more heights, if everyone agrees, the community and the council and DRC and everyone, they may get it. But now, if they want that 90 feet height on the UC 5 or UC 6, we will have a negotiation on the yardstick that we have. That is, you get for 5 extra feet, you're providing 10 points, right? So if you're looking for another 20, 30 points, obviously you're going to provide a lot more points. We don't know exactly because it's something we need to, on a case-by-case basis, depending on the site, depending on what they're providing. But that is the yardstick. I think Ryan wants to add something here. Yeah.
I do want to clarify as well, too, because when we went through the Urban Core Master Plan and provided a projected heights map, what we realized is the categories of UC 5 and UC 6, not all the height projections were the same. So in some areas, like what you described on Apache next to Hudson Manor area there, we didn't put a height density or a height projection map in that location. So basically the base height is 55 feet. The Urban Core Master Plan doesn't project or encourage to go any higher than that. But there are some areas where there's some additional heights that range up to what we were describing, up to 90 feet. That would be something that would be negotiated for City Council through a public hearing process, vetted through the public hearing to basically request that additional height. And then so the council would have to negotiate whether or not there would be additional public benefits for that project site.
Is that going to be in writing, though? I mean, is that going to be part of the code that if you're going to go through the PAD to get the extra height, you are going to provide more public?
Yeah, what the section, the process section in the portion of the ordinance states is basically if you satisfy the base code and development bonus program requirements, beyond that, going to the Urban Core Master Plan heights, you have to go through a public hearing through City Council to negotiate those defined standards. So it's a little open-ended, but there's a public hearing vetting process. So it's a unique case process that has to be notified to the public, there's public hearings, and then they can present their proposal of what they're providing in the form of public benefits. So with the other cases, we have basically more of a administrative process, and then it goes through the development plan review approval for the public meetings. This is more of a vetted process that would require public hearings and outreach to then ultimately vet what the request is. So a little bit longer process.
And it wouldn't be easier just not to have that?
That is the alternative. So I mean, the alternative of what we have today is just the PAD overlay process.
All right, thank you.
All right, other questions for Mr. Adhikar? Commissioner Johnson.
So I'm curious on the public outdoor gathering space. That is above and beyond what would be required for landscape and other purposes, is that correct?
Yes. The public outdoor gathering spaces have to meet the specifications. So landscaping could be just simple landscaping, whereas the public outdoor gathering space have to be, there's a diagram, and there are types of public gathering spaces in the UCD, like a form-based code. The sizes, what types, the connectivity with the street, and what are the amenities that you have to provide. So only these will qualify for the public gathering space points.
So is there overlap? So if the site is required to have 10% landscaping, and they're applying for 20% of the public outdoor gathering space, does that landscaping, as long as they provide some of these public elements, qualify towards that 20%?
Okay, so on UC1 and UC2, we do not have the requirements at all. So this will just, if they provide, this becomes municipal. In the other, because those are very highly urban zones, in the others also, open space, there's only one, I think UC3, where you require 2.5%. And in UC5 and 6, there is a little bit of, let me look at it, some requirement, but that's a good question.
Yeah, I guess it was unclear to me because I was trying to understand if there was some kind of potential double dipping going on if you just added a water feature into an area that would have been landscaped anyway. You know.
Okay, so I'll make a note of that. But like I mentioned, in many places it's pretty clear because we don't require open spaces, so this becomes very easy. In one or two places, we have to jive those two.
Okay. My second question is in regards to when they're applying for, say, sustainability elements, and they're through the process are coming to this dollar value of these components. That's determined prior and early on in the process. So when the actual development goes in, is there some kind of an auditing or accounting of what actually is put in?
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson was the same type of question that Commissioner Brown asked, because we do want to entitle those points beforehand so that people can plan and design accordingly. And we do have during the construction, before they get the certificate of occupancy, there's an inspection whether they meet all the conditions or not. Even now, we sometimes approve projects with certain conditions, and those conditions are checked later on.
Sure. Okay.
So basically, it's part of that initial review process. So there's still a public meeting to review and get approval for a development plan review that you all typically see. So when we develop the staff report, we'll have to outline specifically that this site is eligible or has been granted a development bonus program, and we'll have to outline what that bonus is. So the information will be clearly stated on the staff report and provided in the packet that's provided at the public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson. Amorosi, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. One other question I thought about was that the in lieu fees are going into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but there is no independent board for the Housing Trust Fund. Shouldn't there be a group of people, kind of like the citizens, that will determine so that money doesn't become politicized? Is there plans on the books, or what?
Absolutely.
Is that
So
like
I
being
do
talked
believe
about at the council level? Or?
Yeah, Commissioner Amorosi, I do believe there is actually a board, but the housing people couldn't make it come here today. Like I said, we will have an implementation manual on all of these things, because the TDR itself, on how that money is going to be spent, there's a lot of implementation thing that we have to think, because the bonus program is going to be, the first time we'll be implementing it in City of Tempe, and also compared to many other jurisdictions, this is going to be very robust and very comprehensive. The idea of that is exactly that it will be managed by the trust fund only for affordable housing within the mandates provided by the council. But we can check with the housing division with some details. Ryan, you have any other further information? But that's how it is going to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I want to go back to Commissioner Brown's first question. You talked about how there's an adjustment to be made in case where developers put together parcels of land that's 5 acres instead of 3, and you don't want them to develop this height across all 5 acres and so on. If I understand correctly, the process of arbitrating that is somewhat discretionary, and I wonder if that, and we've heard comment to this effect already, but I share concern that that might be a little problematic, and if perhaps that wants to be a little more explicitly laid out, or else are we kind of asking for a fight later on that, hey, so-and-so got a different decision than we did? Your thoughts on that?
Okay. So thank you for that question, Chairman Land. There was, in one of the developers meeting we had, I think on December 3rd, someone asked a question and gave an example of the Chase Bank. Like, there's several buildings within one area, and if the bonus points, 100 bonus points, are achieved on a smaller site by providing something very simple, does it apply to the entire site? Because then there are several buildings that could be made. And we had to go back and see that, okay, here is a pro forma. All these point systems are based on capturing about half of the value of that additional profit on a 0.7 acre site or 3.0 acre sites. Anything bigger or smaller, the consultants think smaller basically more or less are captured, but still there's a room to negotiate. The bigger one, it is hard to quantify and put the exact number because they are not exactly scaled one for one. In other words, if you increase the site from 3 to 4.5 acres by 50%, the points that you need to buy do not become 50% more, just because the expenses, the construction technology, and the economy of scale differ. That is why we left that a little bit kind of negotiated between the community development director or designee and the applicant. And that's how we deal with in our zoning ordinance when things are not exactly very clear cut, but we know the basis so that we know how to calculate, but we always negotiate. So as approved by the community development director or designee is kind of pretty standard language that we use in the zoning ordinance. When things are, we cannot write it down very clearly. So that's where we are. But I I share your concern, and because we have the numbers and we have the pro forma, the way it will be negotiated is the developers will have to create a pro forma, and we'll have to make sure that it jibes.
All right, fair enough. My other question has to do with the transfer of rights when you're talking about historic preservation properties. Is this cumulative? Can you purchase the rights for 3 buildings that if they happen to be next to you?
Okay, so it is all available only within the UCD, and the maximum height you can do as a receiving property is the Urban Core Master Plan height. You can buy from more than one, you can split the potential right in more than one location.
Okay, that's what I thought. Any more questions for Mr. Adhikari? Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question regarding the sustainability elements specifically. It seems like some elements might be easy to obtain and are kind of normal part of building design, and then others are elements that seem extremely high and would have a significant cost associated with them. Can you share a little bit more about how these specific elements became a part of the plan?
Okay, so your question is exactly valid. We checked with another jurisdiction which has some sustainability elements, and many of the developers were picking just the low-hanging fruits and getting the points. That is why we did not assign points to any of those 20 different elements that we're proposing. It is the amount of money that you spend. So it doesn't really matter. They can choose what is hard or what is easy. As long as they spend that $250,000 on any one of those elements, a combination of elements, they get those points. Is your question that there should be some elements from outside this list?
I think there certainly could be elements, and some of that goes back to your IGCC, and I do feel like that's kind of hidden under the greenhouse gas emission reduction, so possibly that could be separated out as a third area where it's not falling in under a different category.
That's a good point. So the IGCC, that the alternative means of compliance could be a third element. Point very well taken.
And then, I anticipate it's going to be challenging in some of these to understand what's additional cost versus what might be an inherent cost in the project. So I can see some challenges with that moving forward.
That's a very good point. So if all of this gets approved and we implement it for 1 year, we'll probably come to you to make some changes. That's how other cities are also doing, because when you start something, few things become more clear once you implement.
Commissioner Brown.
I thought I was okay with that footnote until Chairman Lyon brought it up. Who might be the designee? Are we talking about people on the upper floors of City Hall, or someone who's on vacation?
It's usually within the department, because we do get questions, for example, to interpret the zoning ordinance. Sometimes it is not easy. Very often it is Ryan who would be the designee. But anyone that the community development director designates is the designee. Ryan, you want to add anything on that one?
Likely in this scenario right now, it's the community development director as the authority to review and evaluate the intent of the code.
Yeah, I guess just for the sake of transparency, I think if it does become politicized, I think it needs to be open-faced and be done. If let's say we turn down a project, but it goes to council anyway, and then we all have a chance to see what's said and see it in the public eye. We don't want this to happen in a smoke-filled room like Chicago.
Sure. Understood.
Okay, I'm just a little paranoid tonight. Thank you.
Who has smoke-filled rooms anymore?
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
All right, well, I guess I'm going to offer one thought. I think what I've been hearing you say a lot of is these things are challenging just like everything else we do. What is a compatible use? Well, that's hard to define, but we take a shot at it. And I feel like you've taken a very good shot at this. I don't envy some of the challenges that lay ahead, but I feel pretty comfortable with the direction that you're taking. Any further questions, or shall we move on to public comment? Seeing none, I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're now going to open our public comment section. If anyone with us wishes to make comment, you can do so. We can provide you 3 minutes to do so, or I can read your comments into the record. Just fill out one of these white comment cards over on the table and get it to staff over here to my left, and they'll filter it over to me, and we'll get you up here. The first person I have here is Elisa Lyons. And again, we have these fancy new timers from the 80s that are going to give you lights to tell you how much
I
time
have
you have.
never gone over time, not once. And you were the first chair to ever say my name correctly, so thank you so much for that. I'm extremely grateful. Well done.
Well, that's the first name I've ever pronounced correctly then.
No, you're terrific. I appreciate it. My name is Elisa Lyons. I'm here on behalf of Valley Partnership. Valley Partnership advocates for responsible development throughout the Valley. I'm here specifically wearing my non-residential hat tonight. You may hear from others who are representing other segments of the industry, but that's the segment I'm going to be talking about tonight. I have had the opportunity to meet with staff a number of times on this program. Ambika is tired of getting my calls for my next question. He's been very, very patient with me. And while I almost always agree with what Ambika says, tonight I have to take issue with one element. And that is that I do not believe that this program is simple, and I don't believe it's straightforward. I shared this with members of our development community, specifically those who have done projects and are about to do projects in Tempe. And not a single one of them came back and said that they understood how this program works and how they can opt into it in order to get what they're looking for. There are ambiguities, there are confusions. The pro forma that is being discussed includes elements that no private sector entity would ever share. You as small business owners or having personal budgets would never share the level of how much you pay on your loan, for example. That kind of information would never be made public in a situation. We think that there's opportunity to make a program like this work, and we are dedicated at Valley Partnership to working with staff to find an incentive program that really brings the community benefits that you're looking for. I don't think that we're there yet, and I would recommend that the city kick it back to staff to continue to work with the development community so that it truly is an incentive program that can be used. But that's not the only reason I'm here tonight. The other reason I'm here is because what staff shared with me is that while this is being marketed as a voluntary program, that once whatever version of this is in place, PADs will no longer be supported by staff. And that is of concern to me. We believe that PADs are a very creative, flexible tool. It's a negotiation between the city and the landowner. We believe that there is an opportunity to have an incentive program, but we don't think that PADs should be taken off the table as a supportable method for getting development through. So I'm hoping that that was just a general misunderstanding, but it's something that definitely needs to be communicated to the development community if it was a misunderstanding, that PADs still can move forward as a flexible, creative tool to bring the kind of projects you have in the urban core today into the future, but that potentially there could be a bonus program that is also an option, an alternative to PADs if appropriate.
Okay. Ms. Lyons, would you endure a question or two?
Of course.
Okay, I have one. All right. I don't get to ask a question. Should be faster. Okay, so you leveled some criticism saying that this is not easy to understand and it doesn't function in the right ways. A couple of places you pointed out pro formas. Have you created an alternative suggestion as to how these things might function?
No, we have not yet, but we'd like to do that. That's actually been the communications I've been having with our members to say what would be the scenario that looks similar to this, but would actually make you a path forward. Because from my perspective, just saying no, we don't want it isn't acceptable. We need to come back with a constructive option so that there are opportunities to bring sustainability elements, open space elements, and to gain additional height, but to do that in a way that makes sense from a private sector perspective. So I have every intention of staying at the table and having that conversation.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah, I hope you will share such suggestions. I think this process is going to move forward however it moves forward. And if it turns out that the gateway to entry, is the barrier to entry is too high, that, hey, we don't want to share that information, we don't want to do that, it's too confusing, and people don't take advantage of this program, To me, that's the same as the program doesn't exist, but when we can get the correct barriers to entry and the correct, operations in place, well, then maybe those doors open. I see that as sort of the worst-case scenario in what you've depicted. But I do hope you will propose explicitly this is how you might make this work instead. Any other questions for Ms. Lyons? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on then. Mr. Philip Yates.
Evening, members of the Commission. My name is Philip Yates, representative for Riverside Neighborhood Association. And we do have some very, very serious concerns about how the whole point program has been presented to us. It's extremely confusing. And I just don't think that there are enough provisions in this to do anything for the historical preservation of the area. Right now we have, well, in the Riverside area, this isn't something that we'd like to see happen at all. 9-story, high-density developments surrounding our neighborhood is just not something that we'd like to have in general. And a point program that is very hard to understand and implement, I just can't see as being something that's beneficial for a already low-density neighborhood that is basically for people that can afford to live in this area. And to implement something that hasn't even been approved by City Council, I just think it's just not in the best interest for everybody in this area.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Yates? I think I may have one if you'd indulge me. So I hear you on the notion of having a 9-story building next to a historic property. Are your fears at all assuaged by the notion that providing an incentive that, okay, yes, Mr. Developer, you might get to build something that's a little bigger than we would or otherwise allow if you preserve that building, as opposed to just knock it down and put a 6-story building there? Does that in any way assuage that concern for you?
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's nice to say it, but I haven't seen anything in it that is actually something that's we're going to do this, and this is how we are going to make it something that we can say, if you actually do this, then you can, you're basically said, okay, well, we're going to do this, and thanks, but we've seen it all happen before again. It just doesn't work. Just say, hey, we're going to do this, and it just doesn't happen. As a example, across the street from where I live, which is right across the street from one of the oldest buildings in Tempe, we had a whole development that has been flipped 3 times and still isn't even broken ground yet. And we were to assume that this is something that is going to be actually developed is just, I just can't see that as being something that is a good thing for our neighborhood.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep moving then. So I got one name right. Let's see if I can do it magically a second time. Is it Isela Blanc?
Thank you, members of the Commission. My name is Isela Blanc. I'm actually the state representative. I represent Legislative District 26, which is North Tempe. So the reason I'm here is because I had constituents reach out to me and ask me to come and speak on their behalf about the many concerns that they have about this plan. So first signs of the mess that will have a serious impact on the quality of life in downtown Tempe was a presentation to the City Council by the Community Development Department at their issue review session on 4/27/17. The City Planning Department is attempting to end run around General Plan 2040, a plan that was voted on by residents early this year. That's what they highlight. Problems which are included and serious concerns that they have about this is major changes to our general plan and zoning code without adequate public input. I would like to generally say I politely agree with them. This is a first that I've heard of it. I am a 30-year resident of the city of Tempe, a proud graduate of Tempe High, Arizona State University, and I even attended Gilland Elementary. I have been around seeing the many changes that have occurred in the downtown Tempe area, and am at least tried to be as aware as I can be as a Tempe resident. The other concerns are overriding the general plan for the purpose of implementing a categorical change in zoning. One of the comments that I heard is that zoning changes can occur without having to go through the council. I believe that's what I heard the gentleman say in his comments at one point. That is a concern. Lack of coordination with Novus, the massive new development now in progress on ASU-owned state land, is a serious concern. The vagueness and ambiguity about the implementation of the new urban code, the code text amendment in the zoning and development code. Absolutely no chapter in the plan that describes and plans for the increase in traffic that will surely ensure once the plan is enforced. I'd like to speak a little bit on this issue. Living in Tempe, I used to work at Tempe Community Council. When I first started in 2010, it would take me less than 10 minutes from this location, because I live just a block away from here, to go to the downtown area. When I left Tempe Community Council in 2014, it would take me anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes just to get home. In other words, my time increased anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. That's a problem. Another issue that I feel we failed to discuss is I've spoken with several law enforcement officers in the city of Tempe, and they're very incredibly concerned about how they're going to have the support systems. And I'm not even talking about fire. When we're building up that high, do we have a plan in place? We're talking about serious infrastructure changes that our city, I'm not sure if we're quite adapted to doing. Thank you.
I was just going to say, could you wrap up? I won't be that abrupt on you.
Oh, I'm used to the abruptness. I do work at the Arizona State Legislature. And just one final point to that point, if I may. As you know, the Arizona State Legislature continues to preempt cities and towns from being really thoughtful about things like affordable housing. In fact, in 2016 or 2015, the Arizona State Legislature preempted cities from being able to implement thoughtful affordable housing into any new developments. So when we talk about affordable housing, what does that mean for the city of Tempe? And that would be my point, I guess. I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Karen Gitlis.
Knowing I'm not brief, I wanted to present my questions to you as to why I think we still have more work to do on this plan. I'll read my presentation and skip the questions unless I have time. Karen Gitlis, I'm the chair of the Maple Ash neighborhood, and I'm speaking for our neighborhood association. I'm also involved in historic preservation. I'm on the board of the Tempe Historic Preservation Commission. We need more density in Tempe. This is the world in which we now live. It is our new reality. I'm not contesting that. According to Michael Kimmelman in today's New York Times, quote, some of the community pushback to the idea of density derives from a lack of collaborative planning and architecture. The added costs and complications of upfront design can help deliver buy-in, better neighborhoods, and more affordable housing. People want to feel invested and need to picture improvements. That said, I have followed the evolution of this plan since it was first presented to the council on April 27, 2017. issue review session. From the start, there has been zero collaboration with the neighborhoods that are part of the urban core district. No wonder there's no buy-in at this point. The plan is still incomplete, although if adopted, it will radically change the face of downtown Tempe. There are still more questions and a great amount of fear about the unintended and irreversible consequences that may be visited on the population by the implementation of this plan. Given the unsettled concerns and questions, the wisest choice may be to seek answers to these questions instead of jumping feet first into the fire by adopting the plan. And I understand we have a little bit of a respite here. The leap of faith and imagination in this plan will change our general plan, which was adopted by voters. It will change our city zoning and ordinances. We usually change these piece by piece, only as necessary or requested. We do this with careful consideration as well as with the use of checks and balances. This plan, even with input from city historic preservationists, thank you, will further endanger our precious and already shrinking historic resources that should be highlighted, not overshadowed by skyscrapers. The majority of these resources are in and nearby downtown Mill Avenue. The extent of categorical change at one time is just too important and irrevocable to get it wrong. In conclusion, I believe that this plan needs more work. It is too much to attempt at once with too many unsavory potential ramifications. Tempe residents deserve the opportunity to participate in this level of planning. My thought is that this planning should happen in the next general plan process. Please consider denying the code changes on the agenda tonight. This plan is not yet ready for prime time.
All right.
And I'll give you my questions to read at home tonight.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Gitlis. Merrill Darcy.
Hello, here's my, you got my card, okay. Hello, my name is Merrill Darcy, addressing the commission, and resident of Tempe. Okay, first of all, I can't condone or support either this commission, the city council, or community development from becoming the land clearing agency. It's not going to happen on our watch. We're not going to let this even go into this. The affordable housing, this is not going to fix affordable housing. Affordable housing is a social problem. Social problems require a social movement. Not this. This isn't going to work for affordable housing. Affordable housing is a problem in Cottonwood. It's a problem in Apache Junction and also in Maricopa. These areas also have the same problems. Public benefit or public use. Hayden Square is a public benefit. Nobody uses it. Public use, a museum, a cultural center, things like that. What is the difference? No one can explain it to me between either who pays the tax or who doesn't. That's a benefit or a use. Parking garage would be a public benefit. We probably need a few of those, but I'm not going to support any more parking garages. And I'm going to wrap it up with this cultural resource area. Tempe is old enough that this entire city should be a cultural resource area. Absolutely, and not just the urban core. If you can't take this outside of the urban core, it's not going to work, and I don't support it. Thank you.
Okay. Bastien and Druitt.
Good evening, everybody. Just I'll keep it brief just because I know we're getting close to dinner time here, but one thing I would like to echo is this common theme of affordable housing. If there's one thing I can really appreciate about this memo from BAE Urban Economics, it's the part where it says on page 3, affordable housing provides residential opportunities to lower income residents, increases educational outcomes, and enhances economic development potential for the city. Now, it's really a basic math problem with supply and demand when it comes to building housing. When you have an increased demand for housing and a shortage of supply, the last thing you want to do is create more barriers to creating or rather growing that supply of housing. The development bonus program in its current form essentially takes what was generally agreed upon as a base of 160 feet and then creates an additional 35 to 40 foot barrier and says you can no longer build at that height, you now have to pay in order to play and build here. The development community, which is actually attempting to solve the affordable housing issue, is being penalized and being punished unfairly as this program seeks to go ahead and levy charges against them, which is just absolutely ludicrous considering the fact that they're actually trying to address this issue right there where the problem itself exists. In addition to that, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, for example, if we were at a grocery store and you happen to have a shortage of milk, you're not going to penalize the grocer and say that now you have to go ahead and pay us more money because of your lack of milk. It is up to the grocer to go ahead and find more supply of milk and therefore provide it for the residents that need to get it, just in the same way that housing, if we need to create more housing, make it more affordable, we need to offer incentives and offer reasons for developers to come to Tempe, not create paywalls to prevent them from coming here, from building here, and from being able to increase the supply of housing. It can no longer be a solution for residents of Tempe to find affordable housing in Mesa or Chandler or Southern Phoenix to be able to live, work, and play and grow their families here in Tempe. And with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you.
Okay, actually, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is your assertion that the only way to participate in this program is to pay to play?
More or less. I mean, the majority of developments that are happening right now happen to be above 125 feet, especially if you want to do multifamily housing. The base being set at 125 feet essentially forces developers to pay into the system where if you want to get to the 160 feet or above, even closer to the 200, the 190 feet that some of the larger developments need in order to be able to build more denser housing, it's more or less just a paywall right there. I mean, it essentially says you have to spend up to $1.5 million. I mean, if we go by the example that's on one of the last pages there in the memo, in order to be able to build up to the heights which otherwise would be guaranteed to you under the Urban Core Master Plan.
Okay. I rarely do this, but I would point out that we've heard pretty extensively that there are a number of ways that you can enjoy these additional development benefits without paying a penny, including simply providing a sufficient quantity of affordable housing based on the, I can't remember, the AMI, right? And so there's no payment involved whatsoever. If you simply provide a certain percentage of your property as affordable housing at those rates, then you get the additional benefits. There's no payment whatsoever.
To which I would counter, the problem is that the developer still has to pay the cost somewhere, right? When it comes to building the actual property itself, the price of concrete has doubled over the past 3 years. The price of labor has skyrocketed because of a shortage of labor that's there to actually build the properties. There are overhead costs as well that go into the actual maintenance of the structure, you know, whether it be keeping up with the different electrical requirements, helping with the plumbing, whatever else it be. I mean, there's just multiple different costs that go into the actual development itself. The developer is then asked to go ahead and take a hit on recuperating the cost of developing the property by going ahead and reducing in perpetuity, which it says very clearly in the ordinance, for X percentage of units. States such as California, which have some of the most restrictive low-income housing tax credit guidelines, even they only require 55 years for that affordable housing set aside, which of course the state legislature preempted here in the state of Arizona as well.
All right. I'm going to let Adhikar respond to that from here. Thank you. All right, and we have Eduardo Yates.
I think my son Philip has made some very good points that I agree with. Something that and my hearing is very poor, so I've missed some things, I'm sure. But I am still wondering how the property, residential older neighborhoods going clear up to 101 is part of the urban core. These are older neighborhoods. They're nice neighborhoods. Some of them have flood irrigation, lots of trees. They're affordable now to the people who live there. And I fear that what might happen in those older neighborhoods if we allow more density is what is happening already in our neighborhood over on Roosevelt. and that people that now have affordable housing will lose it to houses will be torn down and big unaffordable apartments and townhouses will be built. I hope you've all read this article in the real estate section Sunday. How many of you read that article about how planning for 1 million more people in this area and what problems that will cause us for, cost for infrastructure, for who's going to pay for that? Or the developers who build these things going to pay for what, those things anyway, and much concern about affordable housing there. We should have 90% affordable instead of 10%. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Could you answer that? I'm still confused about what is allowed in those 5 and 6 areas. Are those going to stay single-family residential or not?
Just a second here, Ambika, before you do. Is there anyone else that wishes to make comment? All right, so I'll close public comment. Ambika?
I did not follow the question very well, but the Urban Core Master Plan and the Urban Core District have left all the single-family homes as they are. Anything that is historic, there's no overlay on the Urban Core District and Urban Core Master Plan. The UC 5 and 6 are created basically to protect the single-family homes that are close by, so that any height that is kind of part of the requirement of this streetcar and the light rail transit doesn't really spill over on any one of the single-family areas. So 5 and 6 are created more to protect and not have higher heights close to the single-family homes. In the affordable housing, you said it should be more like 90% affordable housing. We just heard from someone it is something that when you provide affordable housing to a lower AMI, there is definitely a cost to the developer. And so you cannot ask for a lot, because that's why the consultants had to calculate. And please do remember that it's all voluntary. The Urban Core District is also opt-in. Nothing is being rezoned. The Urban Core Master Plan is an advisory document. The bonus program is something that developers can choose or not choose, and it's built on splitting part of that additional profit towards the public benefit. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a few questions, but you're also free to respond to anything you've heard. But can I put questions to you?
Sure. Please.
All right. When do you plan on having some public meetings in which people can be involved?
Okay. So, Robbie, how many meetings we had since 2000?
October 17th, since December 3rd, 18.
And in the last 2 years, we probably had 50 or 60 meetings. In many of the meetings, 50, 60, 100, 120 people, 5 people have shown up. The postcards that have been mailed have been 23,000 postcards at a time, 4, 5, 6 times.
Robbie, Aaron, Community Development. I'm in charge of sending out 20,000 to 30,000 plus postcards every time we have one of these meetings. I do get some back from vacant properties, or sometimes the post office decides they don't want to deliver them because some of the margins are a little messed up. That's stuff I cannot help. But 20 to 30,000 postcards. We've been in front of you guys 3 times. Then we go to council. I've probably sent out 150 to 200,000 postcards over the course of this past 2 years. So, with various dates, various meetings. We post all of our meetings online. We send out through our Neighborhood Services Division, an email to all the neighborhood chairs and seconds. Our Neighborhood Services Division also keeps a very diligent list of people that have attended every meeting, and those people get email as well. So we make sure that we get the notice out, and there's people here, so I think it works. Not everybody shows up, but I can only do so much.
All right. Well, that's fine as far as it goes, but what if someone wants to make specific suggestions as to how this plan might be changed or how it might work different? Is there means for that to happen?
As Ambika and Ryan have said, you can email any one of us at any time. We're happy to take your phone call. We're happy to set up a meeting with you, sit down one-on-one. We've done that with a number of people over the course of this process, and we will continue to do that until this process is complete. There's multiple ways to reach us. You can come down to City Hall, and I'll sit at the front counter with you, and Bika will too. We'll explain all this stuff and go over it in vast detail, probably more so than you've ever wanted.
All right. Well said, Robbie. And Bika, a couple other pointed questions, if you'll indulge. If I were to say that this is a mandate to build more density in our city, how would you respond to that?
So initially, the motivation of the Urban Core Master Plan was the direction by the council that there's a population that is being increased, and by 2040, think of how many people are coming, what kind of development is happening, and how can you streamline it. So for example, the US Census had a news report, I think a couple of weeks ago, that showed Phoenix, Arizona is, I think, in the top in terms of the growth of census between two censuses. Every day, a net of 70 people settle in just in city of Phoenix. And I had a similar type of calculation out here. The Arizona is growing, and people are coming in. And people apply for PAD, and they go through all that processes just because there's a demand. So the motivation for the Urban Core Master Plan was to delineate the areas to accommodate that kind of growth that is coming by 2040. It's not, we are kind of building, it's not a project, it's not a plan to build, unlike the Novus program, it's not a master plan. It's a master plan for policy guidance to accommodate that growth in the proper places. The Urban Core District, we were obliged to create and update the existing Transportation Overlay District because we took money from the federal government for the streetcar. And part of that money, because there's almost $200 million worth of investment on the streetcar, there has to be ridership. It has to support people with lower income. So one of the mandates is to update the existing Transportation Overlay District that we have, which we created in 2006 for the light rail transit. These are always required because they are kind of connected. And so the Urban Core District that we have prepared was from that Federal Transit Authority money, where the city also put in a little bit of money. And then part of that was also to do a study on affordable housing. And the affordable housing strategy was adopted by the council in July. It's a larger strategy. The bonus program and some of the affordable housing concept that you see today are included in that strategy. And so the council has basically adopted that as a policy document also, because affordable housing and the public transportation also go in hand. So to come back to the question, the plan is not to create heights or to build anything, because city doesn't build. The plan is to basically guide the development that's coming in a much more comprehensive and appropriate way, so it is connected by the transportation, it happens where there's infrastructure, and it happens with the sustainability and open space and the walkable elements, so that when people build, when the market is provided for by the developers, it also gives the public benefit. That is the whole intent of it. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding. Hey, here is a map, and you are building all of these high-rise buildings and tall buildings. City doesn't do that. It's a plan we're trying to streamline. Hey, if you want to make an application for the PAD, that's this is a location that the city thinks is appropriate because there's a road network, there's a transit network, there are transit that are being planned. And if you build it, give back something to the community in terms of the public benefits. That's the whole intent of the plan. Sometimes we get very, very misunderstood, but we try to clarify it whenever we get an opportunity. So I appreciate that question.
Okay. Well, speaking of PADs, what do you say to the idea that the PAD system is going away?
It is not.
Well, that's an answer right there.
We cannot take away the PAD, right?
So we're certainly creating an alternative to the PAD overlay process. The framework that establishes the urban code district is an opt-in process. And so in order to get at that level, we've created then a second level of voluntary program to get even higher heights. And so by opting to the code, you're not eligible for the PAD overlay process. You can choose before getting into the urban code district to still utilize the planned area development overlay or rezoning process that is available to all properties today.
So you're not going to twist my arm and I have a choice?
No, but when you come into the urban code district, then the only option alternative for higher heights or densities is to implement the development bonus programs.
And again,
certainly,
that's
we're trying to create the tools and pathways to encourage some of these incentives that the council has wanted to see. We're talking about affordable housing. We're looking at additional sustainability elements, things above and beyond what the code would require today. You'll have a public hearing process still with a potentially PAD. We'll have to make recommendations. There's certainly opportunity for guidance to encourage or recommend that project provide some additional development standards to it to make it a worthy project, but they still have that process available to them today.
Okay. And one more question for either of you, whichever of you. Pay to play.
Okay, so we actually had a separate meeting with the Association of the Multifamily Housing. Yeah, we did meet with them on discussing and explaining what we were trying to do. The current modus operandi is the developers apply for PAD for any heights because we don't have any other mechanism. We don't have high-rise districts. Eventually, if this urban core master plan got passed, then maybe we can think of creating some district with its own requirements like City of Phoenix has. So when people want to go to particular height like HR1, H1 that they have in City of Phoenix, there's also a requirement in terms of what kind of open space and public amenities that you have to provide. It's already part of the zoning in City of Phoenix. I used to work there. So right now, because the PAD is discretionary on a case-by-case basis, one at a time, and sometimes even the community doesn't get much of what they are looking for, like affordable housing or whatever. And in Arizona, affordable housing, we cannot get it through inclusionary zoning like many other states do. So the only way to support, and affordable housing seems to be, many people seem to be supporting that, and we did a different study when we did the strategy. There is a shortage of affordable housing. That was also partly required when we did the urban core district. So here is one opportunity that we can ask the developers to provide affordable housing in exchange for higher heights and density, rather than just giving higher heights and density just without any discretion. And so it is how you want to take a look at it. So the calculations are not to extract the profit that the developers are making. In the market, they will make the profit. And the base heights are given just by opting into the UCD. Additional height, whatever additional money that they were making, we wanted them to put back a part of that. Actually, for affordable housing on site, the consultant's calculation is only 40%, not even 50%. So that if you give those 3 units, 3% of your units is affordable housing, City of Tempe's housing division will actually monitor and try to help you in terms of renting it out to the eligible people. All that management, City of Tempe will take care of it. There's no additional burden on monitoring and other management for the developers. The only thing that they got to do is They got to provide it. They got to make sure that those units are available for those rents. So definitely they forego a part of the revenue stream for a long period of time. But that is calculated in the pro forma that only that revenue lost is only 40% of that profit that you're making at one time. So it is calculated from the real estate economics perspective not to really hurt the developers, let them make additional profit, but part of that is flowed back into the community benefit. That's how it is calculated.
Okay. I know I've gotten into questions in not the usual order. Do you wish to respond to anything else that you've heard?
Just a couple of things I wanted to add. So from 2017, I know it's a big city and it's really hard to get hold of everyone all the time. People have different schedules, but since 2017, I think we had, I would say about 50 or 60, at least 50 or 60 meetings. Some of the meetings were very well attended, very extensive. In some of the meetings, we had 125 people coming up. And we've gone to different areas just to make it easy for people. We've gone to Escalante Center, West Generation Community Center. We've gone to many, many places for the meeting. And we tried, because as professional planners, we are paid in the city. We are public servant. We want to hear from people, and we want to make this planning exercise as community-driven as possible. That has been our effort. Many of the people who spoke here today, we have met with them individually. We have talked to them on the phone. And we do open houses. We have a website that has been open with all the documents, with our email, dedicated phones and emails. We do get calls, but it's a big city, so not everyone we will be meeting. You know, there will be some people who will still be left. So we've made every effort, and that was the direction that was given to us on October 17th by the council. Meet everyone, also within the city. So we organized an interdepartmental meeting, and I think about 45 or 50 people, even within the city. We had 2.5 hours meeting. So we are trying as much as possible to meet with people because it's our job. So that's one I wanted to basically clarify. And in some of the questions, I think, because we have 4 different elements that are coming along, and sometimes there's a confusion on what we are trying to do, because we did the Urban Core Master Plan, and I explained it is not a regulatory document, it's a policy level document. We created Urban Core District as an opt-in, so we're not changing anybody's zone. Sometimes people worry when they see a map and when they see a meeting, I get phone calls, is my house, the zoning being changed? We can't do that. We have Prop 207 in Arizona. So we explain, no, this is opt-in. This is something that is available. If you opt in, you get more heights, but it also has better standards in terms of public utilities, public amenities, the sustainability elements, and lower parking. You know, there are a lot of good planning that has gone into it. We have actually spent some money on the consultants, a lot of good planning to minimize congestion, to discourage parking, tree production. A lot of good things has gone into those planning. And then the general plan amendment was required as a major general plan amendment just because we wanted to kind of change some of the uses to mixed use along the light rail and the streetcar, and also some heights and densities. So that was kind of connected, and it is by the books. It is allowed in the ordinance. It is allowed by the state law. It's a general plan amendment, and that's what we processed, and all those postcards and letters were sent accordingly. Then the bonus program, we were sort of putting it as a placeholder on saying on all how these heights will be achieved, but we got a very specific direction from the council that come back again with the bonus program also. And then, so this is why the bonus program is the only element that we came to you today, but you know, we are very happy to respond to any questions on anything because all of those things are related. And like Ryan said, looking at the concerns and the complexity and some of the questions that community have, we have now kind of thought that we'll go to a little extended period of time so that there's even more opportunities for public and council and commission or committee and everyone to listen to. For example, we went to the Tempe Transportation Commission 3 weeks ago. When we explained all of this, the bonus program, they basically said, in principle, we like it and we approved. So they actually took a vote and approved it in principle. And we've been going to downtown Tempe authorities, we've been going to Chamber of Commerce, anyone who is willing to listen to us, we are going. So if people feel that there is not enough information and if you haven't heard from us, just give us a call, come and meet with us, or write us an email or call us, and we're very happy to discuss it all the way through.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for Mr. Adhikar? I think we'll thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one question.
Yes.
All right.
This has to do where we go from here.
Yeah.
We make a recommendation, but you've extended the time on the rest of the process. Where does it go from here when we make a decision? Or if we decide we don't want to make a recommendation?
Okay.
What takes place after this meeting?
Okay, so I'll let Ryan talk about the process.
So right now we've got a continued item of the Urban Core Master Plan Urban Code District of February 13th, City Council. Staff is going to be requesting a continuance on those items. So we won't even bring the development bonus program forward yet. We plan to delay, continue those to a date certain, likely in April or May, and then be able to catch council up on having a couple work study sessions, get some input, guidance, and then have the public hearing process. Like I said, likely in April and May. So that gives us some more time to work with the community, even work with you all if you so recommend to decide to have further discussions on this. We can certainly do that. But the tail end component of the process is being delayed so that we can have time to catch up and present materials to council regarding the work study session items scheduled in February and in March.
Any other questions? Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more late question. Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I want to address, well, two things. The one thing is the city really needs to make clear to the public that we have no control over what ASU does with the Novus project. That isn't clear. People just think that we have something to do with that, and we really don't. But her other point about traffic not being part of the plan, I've always had an issue with this, that the city lets the developer come up with their traffic studies. And it never fails that they always come back and it never is going to make an impact. Wouldn't it be a better idea, like what mortgage companies and banks do with property assessors? They have a pool, and the bank itself or the mortgage company isn't directly involved with the assessment. So we should do the same thing with the traffic studies. We should have a pool of companies that do traffic studies, and then it's the city that picks the company to do the traffic study, not the developer, so they don't have a direct influence over what's going to happen to the entire city.
Okay, so there are two parts to that question. I will respond to the first one, and maybe I'll ask Ryan to help me on the second part. The first part is on the UCD. So traffic and transportation, on every meeting that we go, it does come up because it's very important. People are frustrated with the congestion. And the mandate of this master plan was only to conceive of the traffic on the higher level in the Urban Core Master Plan. So there are 5 or 6 pages on how traffic is going to be managed. There's a trip reduction program, there is a transportation management association, there is a connectivity program, there are some recommendations on how, because this population increase or the growth is going to happen anyway, how frequency of the light rail and streetcar could be improved, how the orbit system could be expanded. There are recommendations like that on that policy document. There are like several pages of that. In the Urban Core District, Commissioner Amorosi, there are some requirements in actually trying to reduce the car driving. So there is the parking, because usually we only have parking minimums. Cities have parking minimums, and some of the cities are even taking that out. And the developers can do a lot more parking, and sometimes that takes a lot of space and it becomes very hard, the walkability challenge. So the Urban Core District, because it is a transportation overlay district, there's also a maximum parking limit. There's a minimum parking that is required. There's a maximum parking limit, which is about 125% of the minimum parking. And the parking in general, we wanted to reduce it. But because we heard from many developers and many property owners, they wanted some flexibility. There is also a flexibility in case they want to go up, they need to provide future-proof parking, they need to provide some sustainability elements. There are certain things that they need to do, then they can build more parking. In other words, they can go underground on a parking garage, or they can do a parking garage which becomes convertible. And if you remember, we discussed it last time, so that because we know things are changing in 5-10 years, we don't want to have a lot of parking garages, ugly-looking parking garages in downtown. They should be able to be convertible, like downtown Chandler right now has a future-proof parking. So some of those things have been required because this is a planning and zoning instrument. This is not a traffic planning instrument, but we do work with the traffic planners and transportation within our city, and they've got a list of items on which they're working on right now. Some of them are feasibility study of expanding the streetcar and expanding the rapid bus, and many other things like enhancing the street intersections, like, for example, the rural and veterans and rural and university. Number of items are being worked at simultaneously. From the land use and zoning perspective, we do not tackle all of them on this one because this is not the right place, but it is thought of and it is integrated from that perspective. And to your question, when we require a traffic impact assessment, usually now the property owners or the developers do it. Can the city have a pool that we can choose?
So the traffic impact analyses are prepared by professional traffic engineers. Somebody's got to pay them. Typically, they're consultants. We do have staff on hand that provides review and evaluation of those traffic plans that get submitted to the city. So as part of the development team, they provide that analysis and overview. Our traffic engineers with the transportation division review that and evaluate that. If there are any corrections or errors, they provide those comments directly back to the consultants to get those fixed. So we have an in-house review evaluation that checks and verifies to see that information is accurate or confirmed. So it's never just the consultants bringing a private traffic engineer in and saying, these are the numbers and you got to believe them. They're reviewed and vetted through the city through a process by which the transportation division evaluates the information.
Chairman, and to add to that, in the recent, some of the recent high-density projects, if you noticed, and I can bring some examples back, that transportation, there's a condition of approval in certain cases that you may have seen about travel demand management and some of the TDM-related requirements that transportation has provided, where when a TIS is stating certain things that will mitigate these traffic impacts, now the transportation department is requiring an annual report moving forward with some of these. This is a newer policy where they would have to document it on a regular basis, on an annual basis, whether those things that they stated during entitlement are being met through those through that TIS that states all these different mechanisms. So that is a newer one that we are actually managing it and starting to implement based on the type of development. So there is a couple of cases that we have stipulated those as a condition of approval or part of their transportation. They will be requiring that because that's part of their policy document that they have been implementing.
So what will happen if they don't, if you analyze it and they're not meeting their goals?
I can circle back. I don't have the details of it, but in the urban code, that the proposed urban code that you saw previously, the UCD, there are penalties associated with those that are actually in that code for the UCD. So there are some, okay. Yeah, that is being, actually was incorporated in the UCD if that gets approved.
All right.
Yeah, there's a clause in the code that they've got to meet and then they've got to provide a report every year. If they don't do that, there are, like she said, there are penalties. And there's also a linkage in the code that they will have to look at the transportation policy manual that is being updated by our transportation department. And it is in conjunction with Maricopa County, travel management plan and the traffic reduction plan. So all of those things we were kind of, very much aware. I just wanted to as a reminder, which I spoke a long time ago. So the city of Tempe is right now about 195,000 people. For simplicity, let's say 200,000 people. And we grow at the rate these days about 1.5%. That's about 3,000 people every year. And if you divide that by 365, that's about 8% per year. So when city of Phoenix has 70 people coming, permanently moving there on a daily basis, we have about 1/10 of that because we are 1/10 of the size. We get about 7 or 8 people permanently moving. It's a free country, and market economics and our economic development department and the council do like people moving in and building and having a job. So this effort, sometimes we get misunderstood. This effort is to manage. People do come, cannot restrict, cannot stop. And on an annual basis, there are a certain number of people come in, and by 2020, we said in the urban core alone, about 40,000 people will be there. And in planning, some of the things that we studied a long time ago is once you have that population demographic, you can see how many households are required, divide that by 2.2, how much square feet of retail space is required, multiply that by maybe 200 square feet, and how much traffic lanes are required, how much doctors are required. Actually, I've done some quick calculation, how many nurses are required. With population growth, all of those things in planning we studied, and it actually happens. And these efforts are basically to conceptualize all of that and see how best to accommodate that. But and the city doesn't do it. City only provides a framework and a policy guideline when people make an application. That is the effort that I just wanted to kind of reiterate.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Adhikari.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lebesgue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, Commission, your thoughts? Anyone wish to chime in any way? Or are we beating it to death? Commissioner Amorosi.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Lyon. It's big and complicated, but I did want to address that I'm surprised, since it's been going since 2017, that neither the Valley Partnership or the Arizona Multi-Housing Association hasn't come up with an alternate plan. And I have a feeling it's because those were the kind of lobbying groups that convinced the state legislature to put a law in so that cities couldn't have inclusive zoning. And so they're pretty much for developers building and making as much profit as they can. I don't see where they're going to come in with an affordable housing component. So anything that the city can come up with which will work, I think, is better than having nothing at all. I wouldn't hold my breath on those two coming up with a great plan. Thank you.
Anyone else? Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think a lot of citizens, if you live here in Tempe or you're a citizen of anywhere, that frustrate you is that notion that government, this bureaucracy that doesn't solve problems but talks about them a lot. So if you live in Tempe, you're probably frustrated with something. We have a homeless issue. We talk about it all the time. We don't have a solution yet, and we're going to talk about it for years to come, and we probably still won't have a solution. If you drive up and down McClintock, there was probably a time that you were really upset when they took away lanes and put bike lanes there, and that frustrated you because it made commutes even worse. And then everybody talked about it for a while, and everyone got frustrated that we didn't solve that problem or put the lane back. But pick an issue, parks, whatever it is. Affordable housing has been kind of the problem, du jour of the last, several years. We've all heard the don't let perfect get in the way of good. And to me, this is that kind of issue. We could delay this another couple of years. We've already heard that by the time the council makes a final decision on this, it's going to be at least 3 years worth of talking about it. April 2017 is what everyone's agreed when this first started getting kicked around. We've heard there's been literally hundreds of public meetings about it. Everybody's poked holes at it. We've heard some very eloquent discussion today about ways it could be improved. Well, the time to make the improvements or get your suggestions on paper and in front of the decision makers is now. It's been 3 years. No decisions coming tomorrow, but by April, if you got a better idea, write it down and get it to somebody who can read it and do something about it. We're a recommending body. I'm going to be fully in favor of keeping this thing on track so that we stop talking about things and we try some new things. I think the intention is good, and I welcome people who can make it a better plan, but it's never, ever, ever going to be perfect. 100 years from now, we'll still be changing it, but it won't be perfect. But I'm all in favor of moving it down the track.
Other thoughts? Should we entertain a motion regarding our recommendation?
Just to get something on the record, I move approval of the Urban Core Master Plan, PL 190112.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve from Vice Chair Michael DiDomenico, seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed, if any? Motion passes 6-1. All right, folks. That's our last item of business. Thank you all for your attendance and for your involvement. We actually do listen to what you say. Thank you for being passionate and expressing your views. Ms. Dasgupta, can you enlighten us regarding our upcoming meeting?
Yes, certainly, Chair. For February 11th, DRC meeting, we have a request for a development plan review for Eastline Village Phase 1 at 2025 East Apache Boulevard. We also have a request for an use permit for the second-story addition for the Lewis residence. That's a continuance from the January 14th meeting. And then we do have the request for live entertainment at Tempe Farmers Market on 805 South Farmer. Those are the 3 items for the next agenda.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.